You may not have noticed, but this week, Google just told every business owner what they need to do to stay relevant online as AI takes over the web. Hey, welcome to Growing a Fruitful Brand, where we discuss how to create and grow a brand that makes the world a better place for you, your customers, and your employees. I'm Ben Luters, founder and art director of Fruitful Design and Strategy, and this is my business partner and brand strategist, Raj Lula. So Google held their annual I/O event, which, do you know what I/O stands for? Like what that's about?
I mean, is it input output?
Yeah, input output, exactly. You got it. Every time I
computer
hear it, I
nerd.
think of like E-I-E-I-O. It's just like stuck in my head, Google I/O, I'm sorry. Which is a lot like Apple's big announcement events that they do, and we always watch those because we're kind of, Apple freaks. But in it, they detailed changes coming to the Google programs that will affect every business's existence.
Yep. And so the nice thing is that there's clues inside these kinds of events of what's going to be coming that helps us figure out how to market ourselves, how to talk about ourselves online. We know that for every business to be successful, you have to have a website. And for that website to be found easily, you have to perform well on Google. So listening to Google's events help us know, okay, how can our website be found more easily? Therefore, how can we do business more easily?
Yeah, it's probably more important for us to stay up on the Google events and the Apple events. A lot of times Apple events is like, what's the new fun toy that I can get? And Google has some of that too for those that are, Android users and stuff like that. If you're interested in their new tablets and stuff like that. But for us, and for all of you listening, it's really important to know where Google is going because we are so dependent on Google right now as businesses.
Yep. We're not going to recap the whole event for you. The Verge and other great tech publications have done great recap videos of the event that are about 15 minutes long, and we'll drop a link in the show notes so you can see those. But we're going to focus on three areas that were really important in this announcement: search, privacy, and workspace. And workspace are the Google Docs, those tools, those kinds of things. And there's big changes coming to each of these areas for Google that are going to affect every business. So let's jump in. We put search first, even though it kind of came about halfway through the event, because this is the most important one for our customers, for business leaders, and because it affects how people find your business. So can you just tell us a little bit about what do they talk about with search? How is search changing?
Yeah, I mean, it's changing in some really cool and good and dare I say, natural kinds of ways. And so you're going to see AI integrated into our search in a really cool way, with more conversational search prompts and getting better, more accurate results. And so, one of the things that I really loved about it, what they showed is kind of like, ChatGPT or some of these things, Bard. It's more of a conversation where you ask a question, you get really great results, but then you can ask like follow-up questions, and there's like a history of that you can kind of scroll and see. And if you check it out, it's a really cool. You can ask pretty like complicated questions, and you'll get a really nice conversational response.
And I think we've talked about this before, how people have kind of trained themselves to Google speak, where they gave this example of just asking Google, where can I take a dog and some kids under the age of 3 to a national park for vacation. Normally we would do searches in bits, right? We do like national parks that are good for kids, and then we'd pick a national park and go, okay, is blank national park, is Zion National Park dog friendly? And then if we didn't get the right result there, it's like, actually, the dogs are not allowed on the trails there. Okay, then we got to go back and look at the national parks again, pick a different one. Is such and such, dog friendly? We've just trained ourselves to work for Google as opposed to Google working for us, and that's changing in this new iteration.
Exactly. I really love that. Like, in the olden times that we're living in right now, and about to not live in. You'd try your best Google search. Didn't quite get what I wanted. Let me start over again. You're having to work extra hard. And it looks like with a new one, it's going to be a lot more conversational. And you're going to find yourself, I think, asking just more in-depth, complicated questions.
Yeah, probably asking more questions.
Yeah, just asking more questions. Whereas, I think I've, sometimes dumbed my stuff down. I think Google could handle a lot more than what I would probably just search for Bryce Canyon or arches and then have to start like clicking through links to find out more. And like, what does, instead of asking it the actual questions that are on your mind.
What's funny is I didn't realize, even in preparing for this episode, I ran into this problem because we're going to be talking about the AI like writing piece of this in a little bit here. And I was Googling questions about, plagiarism and do you have to credit, Bard and ChatGPT and Jasper, the other, famous kind of writers, AI content generators. Do you have to credit them? And the thing that I kept getting was how much credits cost for to use those platforms, like because you have to, it's like you have a certain number of credits left to write a certain number of emails or whatever. And so I was having to like reformat my searches based on, it's like, okay, well, plagiarism or right. And so it's like, what word did I not use correctly to make Google work for me? That's fine. I didn't even think about it, but I ran into this exact problem not 20 minutes ago.
Oh, that's crazy. And hopefully you won't be running into that.
Yeah, hopefully it's going away.
It'll learn more and be more conversational.
And something that I like about this is that we're probably moving more towards voice search. And so we're not even going to have to type these questions anymore. It will be more natural to just speak to our computers. And I know that stuff's all available right now, but we don't do it because, if you have to do your search. And you remember the old days where we had to put like quote marks around certain phrases, and then sometimes you had to do like must include, don't include, and there were all these symbols,
basically code.
There was like
command line.
You could use plus signs to do something. I can't remember, but like there were all these different ways of searching. Those codes still exist, but you don't have to use them as much because Google has just gotten so much better at serving you what you want the first time.
Right.
And we're going even further towards that. And I think that's where we're going to start talking to our devices more.
Yeah. And I know that might sound a little creepy or a little like, what is it? 2001 Space Odyssey, like talking to your computer or whatever. Is it HAL? I can't remember.
Yeah,
but it's also the kind of the best part about this.
It's also Star Trek, where the computer's actually helpful and doesn't try to kill you. You know,
we are a bunch of nerds here. We watch the Google events. We talk about Star Trek. Yes,
which is interesting though, because Star Wars, nobody talks to the computer.
C-3PO. Go talk to the hyperdrive.
Yeah, that's true. But you don't see humans talking. But it's because it was a long time ago.
That's right. It was
it's not the future.
Ago. That's right. And which is where we live now. We're way advanced. I love this segue. But moving on, I think this is like, to me anyways, this is like the best and like most natural use case of AI that I'm really excited about. There might be some unforeseen issues with it, but for the most part, I think this is it's going to be really fun to use and interact. I think we're going to get better answers faster, and even in the thing they're saying, like, this is great for those questions that have questions embedded in them, things that have lots of different viewpoints, and you need lots of sources to kind of sort out what you believe, and so I think it's gonna be great for research and getting the right answers for the specific questions.
Yeah, speaking of sources, this is a big way that ChatGPT and Google are different. Google is leaning into transparency here. In fact, they even said in their presentation that you can see how the information is corroborated, and I know that they use that phrase on purpose. Because when you ask ChatGPT a question, it gives you an answer, but you don't have a way to gauge your level of confidence of whether or not that answer is correct. We talked about this in our last AI episode. But with Google, they're putting links to the side of what they did. In fact, they even have a mode where you can expand it and see the links under each answer of where they got those answers. And so I think it's a better way to approach this problem. I'm guessing ChatGPT will probably clone this soon, or Bing will, and I think Bing is kind of already going that direction. But I liked the way that Google did this, and it gives credit to the people who actually created the content, and it gives you more confidence because it's then not just the loudest voices online saying that, you know, whether an election was rigged or you know, or whether a disease is dangerous, or, you know, if certain celebrities were,
he's just picking random things popping into his head. This is not built on anything in reality, obviously, but
it's not. We're not just going, well, this is what most of the internet says. It's like, okay, who is saying this on the internet? Because it really matters.
Yeah, exactly. And then you can make your own decision on what you want to believe at that point. But I think I love that Google's leading the charge there.
Yep.
You know, don't leave us in the dark there. Let's make sure we cite our sources, just like we did in high school. You know,
and along those lines, they talked about they had this great quote. It's built on Google's ranking and safety systems that we've been fine-tuning for decades. They're really positioning themselves against ChatGPT here, and with that is one of the like biggest insights. If you don't hear anything else from this episode today, is that Google made it really clear that they're leaning into human-created content. The gal who was presenting, she said that search will continue to be your jumping-off point to what makes the web so special. Its diverse range of content, from publishers to creators to businesses, and even people like you and me. She made it really clear that you know, things like blogs about taking your kids to a national park will still be really relevant. And even in the commercial that Google showed for their product, you know how they do this in these announcements where they talk about it for 20 minutes and then they show like a 2-minute commercial of how the product is changing. They showed you know, both that human created content, and they had a special emphasis on YouTube Shorts, which I think is really interesting. So we'll talk about this later in the episode, but if I were to take anything away from this episode, creating more content for your website and creating short video content is going to be huge for marketing your business and being found on Google, because it's going to start to be filtered into those synopses. You know, you ask Google a question and it's going to give an answer, and that answer could come from you, from your business, if you are the one creating the content. It could not be more important. Like I said, if you take nothing else away from this episode, it's that you need to be creating content. You need to be or working with people like us to create content, because this is where search is going.
Yeah, I'm glad that you mentioned that, the emphasis on YouTube Shorts, and obviously we have a YouTube channel. We do YouTube,
and
Shorts.
We're really famous. My kids love when we get to 4 views.
We are kind of a big deal.
All 4 of you.
We are kind of a big deal. Hopefully I'll be changing.
2 of them
soon.
are me.
But you know, I was just talking to a social media friend of mine. It's actually my wife's cousin, and he said one of the first things that they do is they try to get businesses they work with on YouTube, because YouTube is owned by Google.
It's basically a search engine. Yeah.
And I'm just like, you know, so just think about that. Like, you know, think of how powerful Google is, and remember that, like, you know, YouTube is a part of that. And so don't neglect that. Even if you know, maybe don't have necessarily, you know, have a video podcast that you're like launching every week, having a couple, you know, key videos about your business that you have on YouTube that can pop up when people search for your business, maybe not the worst strategy.
Well, and such a great point about, you don't have to have a video podcast or a studio or anything like that. You know, everything I have ever fixed in my house, I have looked for a YouTube video.
Have you fixed things in your house?
Some.
I'm going to Google this.
But everything I've ever fixed in my house, I've looked for a YouTube video for it, to see somebody do it. And some of them I go, oh, no, I'm not going to do that. And if the person who made the video showing me how to do it was a local plumber or a local mechanic or electrician or whatever, then they'd be the first person I would call. It's like, hey, thank you for trying to help me walk through this. You're very helpful and kind, and therefore I would rather do business with you because you've already provided value to me. You're the first person I will think of. And so, and a lot of these videos are shot on cell phones. They're not fancy. Even some of the most famous YouTubers like Marquez Brownlee, whose channel we both love, he does an entire segment. He does a whole separate channel reviewing cars that he only shoots on phones. Even though he's got a literal $1 million studio in New York,
Does he use like a Pixel 7 or does he use an iPhone? Or both?
He does it on whichever phone he's reviewing that week.
Oh, okay.
Or so it changes.
That.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll have to check that out.
Now, one thing that I did feel, and I don't know if you picked up on this, but I kind of wonder what Gen Z and Gen Alpha are going to do with this, because it sort of feels like we're watching a pretty major transition on the web.
Oh,
and, TechCrunch came out with an article that said that 40% of Gen Z searches TikTok or Instagram before searching Google. And that actually came from a Google executive. That it was their estimate that Gen Z was doing this. So I sort of feel like we're watching the end of the web as we know it. And it's coming into this more conversational, more video-based, thing. I think there's always going to be room for written content. And again, Google is saying that content should be written by humans, that we like AI for insights and for little tools, but that we want connection on the internet, and that the healthy version of the internet is going to look like human created content. Just a lot of really interesting stuff happening in searching here. So some good things to keep in mind, but definitely create content, both video and written, for your website and for your business.
All right, let's get into privacy. I think this is one of the things that a lot of people are kind of, sensitive about when it comes to artificial intelligence is, and with technology in general, privacy. Like, is my information being taken and used for, nefarious means or for any means, outside of my control? And so how did Google position themselves in Google I/O in regards to privacy?
They made it really clear that they're coming out swinging against ChatGPT. They kept saying the phrase, your data is your own, over and over and over again, which I like. I like the position of it. It's really interesting because Apple has been doing the same thing against Google and Facebook. And I think Google has seen how much that has worked for Apple. But also, this is somewhat closer to Google's brand. Don't get me wrong. They take a lot of our emails, data.
Don't they?
I mean, just your searches alone, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they know way too much about all of us.
Yeah.
But as opposed to ChatGPT, which is pretty oblique about, what they're doing with our data, Google is at least saying that your data is your own. So we have a standard to hold them against, which I do like. That said, I would still be pretty cautious about using it with sensitive information. Like we had a conversation here about, okay, well, we're under a certain number of NDAs with our clients. And so do we want to introduce Bard into our environment, which is Google's version of ChatGPT? It's a generative AI writer. And so there are still some issues here. Along those lines, I asked Google or Bard about a month ago if we have to attribute the content that we get from it. And Bard replied, get this, said, if you share my content, you should attribute it to me by including my name in the source of the content. By attributing my content, you are helping ensure that I am properly recognized for my work. How do you feel about that?
That it's just creepy. Like,
it's so
just
creepy.
Say Bard, like that's his name. Like, I just feel like that's a weird.
Is it a him?
Or, that's true. Yeah, I shouldn't assume. Yeah, him or her. Like, that's a really odd. Yeah,
it's so like anthropomorphic. It's weird.
Yeah. That feels like we were just talking about how human search is becoming. That feels like
too far.
Yeah. That's the more iRobot kind of creepy stuff that we don't like, I think.
So interestingly, and you prompted me to do this, and I appreciate that, was you're like, does it still say that?
Yeah, because AI stuff is changing so fast.
Yep.
Like, so what did it say today?
So today it said, it had changed its answer, and it said, yes, it's always a good idea to credit Bard for the content it creates. This helps give credit to the developers who created Bard, and it helps ensure that people are aware I am a machine and not a human being. I still feel weird that it's talking about itself as an I, but at least a lot better switch here.
It's a nice change that, at least in the beginning of that, it refers to itself kind of in the third person.
Like, which feels more natural. Yeah,
exactly. It's for the real people who made Bard, and like, this is a much better answer. I think if you had gotten this, you would not even be mentioning this on the podcast. The first one is the one that's kind of like, okay. it gets into that creepy stuff that you see in like ChatGPT, and I experienced it too when I was playing around with ChatGPT initially. It's just like you start going down this like rabbit hole of questions and conversation, and it's just like, this is spooky. This is like, this is acting like a sentient like human, and it's kind of messing with you a bit. You know
what's weird is that it's more creepy written than it is when Siri's speaking to you, or when Google's assistant.
Why is that? Is it because you imagine?
I think it's a little bit about the interplay between, when you hear a voice back, and I think especially too because the voice is slightly robotic. No matter how natural they try to make it, you get that person is not really there.
Right.
But at the same time, I don't know if you ever do this. I find myself being like, Siri, you're so stupid, like,
yeah.
It's like, oh my gosh, stop, Siri, like as if Siri is a person. But just seeing the computer write back to me, it's like, I know you're not there, and there's this weird, like, I feel like I'm interacting with a machine, whereas with Siri, I feel like I'm interacting with a person. It's weird.
That is weird. That is weird.
Either way, be careful about private information
First world
with
problems.
these things. Yes. Samsung banned ChatGPT and Bard this past week or so because some of its engineers had been feeding code to ChatGPT to have it check, which is a great use case for a tool like this, where it's like, hey, see if I made any mistakes. We're used to that with spell check and those kinds of things. But then that code leaked. And so we don't know how that happened. It was part of the reason why I like that Google's talking about privacy here, but also not great. And we've not yet seen whether or not that same thing will happen with Bard. And there was a great article, again, we'll link it in the show notes, that talked about how AI is just someone else's computer. It was like, I think there was a famous article about the cloud a long time ago saying like the cloud doesn't really exist. You're just putting your stuff on Amazon's computers or Microsoft's computers. Kind of the same thing here. Just know that when you do stuff like this, you are giving information to other entities, and you have to decide how much you trust those entities. JP Morgan and Amazon also have similar bans or restrictions in place for their employees. So I would be very, very careful with whatever you're doing with these services.
All right, Raj, let's get into Google Workspace. So as we said at the beginning of this show, we're big Apple fans for hardware, but we are Google nerds when it comes to the software. We are a Google business. We use, Google Docs. We're using Google Docs right now. Google Slides, we're using more and more for even stuff for our clients. Google Sheets, of course. And so there were a lot of new and interesting things changing in Workspace. Do you want to just take us through some of them, Raj?
Yeah. So I was a little surprised that I didn't hate these changes as much as I thought I would.
You were kind of braced for like, I'm going to hate it.
Google Drive and these tools seem more private, because you organize your files, and it's actually a little difficult to share the files, where you share it and then the other person's like, I need edit access, and like, which is good, right? We want these things to be kind of locked down.
Yes.
And so having AI kind of injected into that, I could have felt like a violation, but interestingly, for the most part, it didn't. There's some really cool applications that they're doing here, and I think part of it is that they have very softly introduced us to some AI. So in email and docs for a while now, they've been using kind of a version of autocomplete, which we've had on search for a long time. So right, this is another way they've gotten us used to this, because search, you start typing a few letters, and then it's like, how did it know I was going to search for that? Or are there that many people who search for that? Or are they reading my mind?
Yeah.
And then they introduced it to Gmail, and you start typing, can we meet at 3 p.m. and it starts, filling out the rest of your question on Zoom or virtually at my office, or and it's not always right, but it's helpful because
and you probably haven't been thinking that's artificial intelligence or whatever. You're just like, oh, that's a nice feature. It's handy, and some of us don't even think about it anymore. And that's the point. Is like they have kind of weaned us onto this kind of different way of thinking, even as far back as like, this wasn't is probably started with Microsoft Word or something, but even just like spell check or like, you know, the Grammarly type of things where it's like maybe use this word instead of that word. You know, we've gotten more used to suggestions in our docs and emails and stuff like that for sure.
So with Gmail, they have kind of a smart compose feature now, which is great, as opposed to smart complete. You can, they gave this great example of asking an airline for a refund for a flight that didn't, you know, happen or something. And so they did the smart compose. It included the details of the flight. It asked for a full refund. And then they even had different versions of the email that could be written, like a short one, a long one. And it was interesting. Now, the one thing that I did think, I don't know if you thought this.
What's that?
Was I kind of wonder if this is going to be essentially like AI sending emails to AI, and then, you know, the AI responds like, "I'm sorry, sir, we can't give you the full refund." And then it's like, "I demand satisfaction," you know, from the
if the robots taking over means the robots taking over, they take over all the crappy stuff that we don't want to do.
Oh yeah,
I am fine with that.
But I'm just worried about, like, you know, if the company programs the AI to like just never give in,
right?
You know, then it's like our computers are just going to ping back and forth forever,
and we'll never get our refund on our.
And it'll probably like just flood your email box, and you'll have to burn your computer and throw it in the river. And like, this could be where Skynet springs up here. But hopefully, though, that doesn't happen. And in the meantime, hopefully, your email that AI wrote for you is going to a human customer service representative who is going to refund you, and that'll be great until that stops happening, and then we're going to have a new problem.
What if it's going to be more like, you know, it's funny, like what if email becomes less of a thing? Sorry, now this is a little bit of a rant. Maybe we'll have to cut this out. But like if it does become, especially for these kind of like, you know, kind of monotonous everyday kind of tasks, that, you know, this is not a creative email. It's like there's a certain way that you need to write an email to get a refund, right? What if it becomes less, you know, composing an email to go to another email server, and it's more like just tell your AI assistant, your virtual assistant, hey, can you send an email and can you get a refund for that thing? And then they handle it, you know, and it is the robots talking to each other, but it's not even like there's this email exchange so much.
So there are a lot of companies that are kind of built on making things difficult, you know, like,
oh, sure.
No offense to any insurance. Actually, you know what? A lot of insurance companies, they don't have enough representatives available. There's arduous processes and all that because the company does well when they don't pay out. And there's been leakers and whistleblowers who have talked about this, that, you know, this stuff happens. So I think that there's an amount of it, especially with good companies, that will be like, cool, we can automate some of these processes. I think you're right there.
Yeah.
In fact, I think what you may even see is, like you said, sort of skipping email entirely. And it might be that you're going to start seeing like buttons in apps saying request a refund or something.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't be surprised even if it's like request a refund and then it opens your camera and says, tell us what happened. And it may not even be a human listening to it, but it could be AI transcribing it and go, you know, okay, they said these 3 keywords. Let's just automatically issue a refund. Or, you know, AI could even get to the point where it measures how angry you sound in the video. and
what if I just have a resting angry voice? You know, and I'm actually
you're going to get a lot of refunds.
I don't have that problem.
I was going to say you don't. These eyebrows are going to get a lot of refunds. So yeah, that's email. It's going really well. Docs was kind of an interesting one. I didn't like the docs stuff quite as much as I liked the others. I will say there was a study, I think it was out of MIT, that showed that ChatGPT and therefore Bard, I would assume, would have similar results, helps writers produce more and better content. But the one thing that it said is that it helps poor writers more than it helps good writers.
Oh, sure.
Which makes sense, of course. Yeah. But this could be one of the reasons, if I can be as bold as to say that I'm a decent writer. But
he is. It's not just him.
But this might be one of the reasons I'm less excited about this feature.
Yeah.
They gave this example of writing a story, and then the the sidebar kind of prompting you like, what could happen next? And it felt like a little third grade teacher to me.
Well, and full disclosure, both Raj and I actually write fiction. Right. And so, it is a little bit of a sensitive issue to us. And like the fact that was the example they gave is like a mom, writing like a fictional story. And on the sidebar, it's like literally, guessing what could be the twist ending or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know. It just ruins it for me. Now, the example was like, oh, I wanted a spooky story to share at like a camp out with my kids, I think is what it was. So, this is not for commercial use, but you can kind of see how, someone who, maybe not as talented of a writer might suddenly think that they are a talented writer. I don't know. It just, it gets a little murky and weird.
Yeah. And there's a little like dystopian future about it, right? Where like, it's like mom's in the kitchen with her VR glasses on, having a Zoom meeting with, or with whoever. And
this is where Mark Zuckerberg lives all the time.
Well, it's like, honey, go have your hologram teacher write a story with you, and it's like it's part of it's just sad, like I'm just not that interested.
That sounds
in that
like
future.
A utopian society that I long for.
Ooh, yeah. Let's let the robots raise our children.
Let's go and talk about slides for a second.
Yeah.
So Google Slides, we use it. Like I said, one of the things that they are including in Google Slides is, being able to generate images within slides, and it was in docs as well. And so, if any of you have seen any of the Mid-Journey, or other, AI generated images, that's all going to be built into these tools now. And so the example that they gave was like a really kind of like, fun personal one. I think it was for like a parent's 50th wedding anniversary or something like that. And dad likes fondue, mom likes pizza, and so they had it generate like an image of the two of them, and it's kind of funny and it's kind of cute. You can put it in the slide deck at the party. No harm done, right?
Even then, the pizza looked really weird.
Oh yeah, it was really gross. It was like, we'll have to flash an image of that, but it was like kind of dipping in the fondue.
Well,
it was kind
like
of gross.
they went to a more photorealistic one,
made it worse.
And the like shape of the pizza was weird, and where the crust was and where the toppings were, it like just creeped me out because it's so there's this thing called the uncanny valley where like if stuff is too close to reality but not quite there or whatever, like it starts to creep you out. And I had that feeling because it's like it looks like a real pizza, but no one in their right mind would ever cut a pizza like that.
And I will say, no, I haven't played around with it, and we're just judging this based on the couple images they showed in the demo. But I think since our AI episodes we did a couple months ago, that a lot of the AI imagery has really like drastically improved in some of these services. Like some of the stuff that we said then I think is already irrelevant because they're getting hands right. They're getting a lot of things right. And I felt like the images they showed in this Google presentation didn't really hit the mark for me. Like,
they're not as advanced.
They'd be better in Mid-Journey, but I'm just judging that based on the examples they gave.
Again, this could be Google doing it on purpose, though. To like more slowly rolling it out. It's still a little cartoony. It's still a little fake to not weird us out.
That's interesting.
It could be that they're not
sounds
caught
like
up.
A conspiracy theory.
No,
but I do.
It could be that they're not caught up to Mid-Journey, but I mean, they're one of the most valuable companies in the world, and I imagine they've got the resources to do it. Whether or not they have the imagination to do it is a different story. But I do think that Google has been really cautious about rolling AI out to us because if people freak and bolt from the platform, then they have a lot to lose.
Well, and I think they mentioned, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they mentioned working with Adobe Firefly. Is that right? And so, and one of the big things with Adobe, as I understand it, is that they're working really hard to make sure that their AI art is not like ripping off the illustration artwork of actual designers. Because so in my community, a lot of people hating on AI art because it's basically stealing and pirating, even in some cases, like taking the signatures of artists and stuff like that. There's a lot of, oh man, it's just making my community really upset. But I know that Adobe, who creates all the creative software for designers, is trying to go the opposite direction. So I'm not exactly sure how they're sourcing what they're doing, but it would you'd imagine that it might not be quite as good though if you're not sourcing it the same way. So that could be a part of it.
Yeah. So for our audience that are business owners, business leaders who aren't artists, they're going to have this tool if they use Google Slides in their sidebar. Should they use images generated by Google or other services to throw on the slide deck, spice it up a little, even if the pizza looks a little funky, and should they pull those onto their website? What's your professional opinion there?
Yeah. So this is getting into the age-old, branding trope of consistency. Like it's all about, we want our images, the weight of our line weight and our icons, everything. We want everything to be on brand and be consistent. That's like half of what we do here at Fruitful. And so just because you can generate, some pizza fondue image or whatever for a presentation, especially for businesses, I don't think that this is necessarily something that we should be doing, because obviously, these images are, randomly and spontaneously generated. There's no way you can, hone in the specific consistency and style of the image to match your brand standards. And so, just because you can, I don't think that this necessarily means you should. In the same way that, they've had it built into slides and other things that you can pull in images from the web, just like random Google images, and put them into your presentations. And, that doesn't mean that those images are, work compatibly and consistently with your brand.
Yeah. And, you think about it in real scenarios, right? Where if you have a deck that's designed for your company that has all of your brand standards, your colors, your fonts, all those things in there, and you're pitching investors, and, it's like you polish that thing up like crazy.
Yeah.
And even, sometimes even making your graphs the right colors and all those things.
Yes.
So that it looks like it's part of a group of people who really thought it all the way through.
Yeah.
So you have that experience, but then on the other side, you have the experience of the consultant who comes in, who obviously just use a PowerPoint or slides template. And it's got the like blue wavy background or whatever. And then they pull some, image of somebody climbing Mount Everest onto the slide deck, and it's pixelated and it's still got the watermark from Getty or whoever on there.
Yes.
And like that kind of stuff just makes you roll your eyes at that person. You go, wow, they tried real. I wonder how much we paid for this.
What are those stock images of like kind of those like white, like cutout guys that are like 3D? Do you know what I'm talking about, with the puzzle pieces?
Yeah.
And they're always kind of like, trying to illustrate kind of like business concepts or something. I don't even know. We'll have to flash some of those on the screen.
Yeah. If you're using those, call Ben right now and get a better slide deck. You deserve better. Your customers deserve better than that.
That's right.
But yeah, so consistency equals trust when it comes to branding. The more your brand looks and feels like your brand, the better you're going to perform.
Yeah.
I mean, think about how the experts do it. Apple, Amazon, Netflix, Google, Nike, Coca-Cola, all of their stuff looks like their stuff. And even when it's different, it still looks like them. Like I/O had kind of a visual theme this year, and it was very cool. But it still looked like Google. It looked a little bit like Apple, which was funny. There was a couple of slides that were like, they're stealing from each other a little bit. Mm-hmm. But even in that, it's like they're still in the vein of high tech and one of the largest companies in the world, and clean user interfaces and all that. They have a lot in common. That's part of the reason they look a little bit like each other. But these companies do consistency really, really, really well. And that's why you're not creeped out by an Amazon van driving around your neighborhood delivering packages to your house, because it's got the smile on it. Yeah. But if it's just a beat up old van and somebody gets out, you're like, hang on, what's happening here? That consistency leads to trust. That's a huge part of branding.
What if the van drives up and it has like an AI generated smile on the side that has a couple teeth missing and a couple extra?
It's got fingers for some reason.
Like coming in the corner. Yeah. I'm just saying, like, you would be hiding your kids from that van, I guarantee you. Yeah. The one thing I will say, the last thing I'll say on this point was, this doesn't mean that there isn't any place for AI generated, graphics or visuals in your brand. And in fact, I just shared with the designers this week an article I saw. I can't remember it off the top of my head which brand it was, but they create this beautiful kind of gradient pattern that's like a big part of this brand through AI generated art, and it has the specific brand colors. And so these tools are really interesting, and I think we're going to keep exploring and trying things out. But in general, though, just generating random images in your slide decks, the chances are that's probably not going to be the best consistent solution for your brand going
It's a
forward.
very much just because you can doesn't mean you should
That's
situation.
Right. Didn't your parents ever tell you that?
One other tool that we didn't mention was the Google Sheets.
Has
some AI coming, and I'm actually really excited about
this
that.
This might be the best
because for those of us who are not spreadsheet experts,
Yeah.
It's very nice to have the computer talk to the computer about the numbers so that we can get the right answer.
Yes.
As opposed to, I hate it when it gives you that error and it's like, reference, you screwed it up. And I was like, I wasn't trying to, So.
And of us, he is the sheetiest of us here. Okay. I mean, like, I look at Google Sheets and I'm just like, I wish it was slides or something else. But yeah, they show an example of like, hey, I want to create a sheet about this kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And it generated that kind
and
of
it looked
thing.
better than most sheets normally do.
Really
it was already
good.
even formatted pretty well.
Different colors and stuff that were pretty. Like, who knows if it's going to work that well? But like that looked pretty exciting to me because, and it reminds me of the thing that, you touched on it a second ago, Raj. But like, what these kind of tools are doing for code is amazing. That normal people that don't know anything about code, we're going to be able to generate our own apps and websites and stuff from just prompts. Yeah. And that's the kind of thing that you're seeing here in Sheets.
Our friend,
like, I don't know how to run Sheets and I don't know all the codes and put a plus sign here and this, I don't know anything. Mm-hmm. But I want to make this kind of a thing and then it doing the work for you.
Yeah.
That's the future.
Our friend Jay Owen, who's a Storybrand agency owner, he created a multiplication practice website for his daughter
with ChatGPT, right?
With ChatGPT, and then it's funny because a whole bunch of other agency owners were like racing each other to get to the top score on the multiplication board, and they're talking trash in Slack, and it was great. But yeah, I mean, a lot of us aren't coders, and it's nice to be able to spin up a proof of concept really quickly. And you still need design help, still need UI, UX help, all that kind of stuff. So you're not cutting out human developers, but it's going to make that work faster. Yes. And because you might take that code then and go, hey, I didn't even know that I wanted to build this, but this took off. And with just a really garbage interface that I created through just simple code. Hey, developer, can you take this and make it what I need it to be? And then that can be the jumping off point for a conversation with a designer or a developer. So that part is really, really cool.
Super cool.
Kind of wrapping up this tools section or the workspace section, just thinking about, okay, what's good, what's bad here? Again, there's some really helpful stuff, automating, drudgery type tasks like asking for refunds, creating some formulas and sheets, that kind of stuff. That's good. Kind of the yellow light stuff would be using images in AI generated images in slide decks. That's one I would do with care. If it's an internal presentation and it's funny, that might be good. Yeah. Otherwise, probably best for personal use. And then with docs, still kind of the jury's out, I think, still on the value of having AI writing stuff for you. I think probably maybe one of the best ways to think about this is I don't think any of us are excited to watch a Marvel movie that was written by AI and then go to our Google account and write an AI generated review that we're going to share with our friends in an AI generated social post, and they're going to respond to that AI generated social post with an AI generated comment, LOL. I don't think that we're super excited about that future. And so what I did like was that Google positioned AI as a tool. And it put people at the forefront. And, as we kind of wrap up things, that's going to be the main message here. We started there with search. We're ending here with tools, is that this is an opportunity for people to share their experiences and to share their expertise and have that feed the conversational AI, especially in search. that's a huge, huge opportunity that I would take advantage of right now. Because if you wait for everybody else to do it, or you wait till it's popular to do, then the market's going to be flooded and it's going to be harder to be clear. But you've got a real opportunity now.
We like to end every episode with a little call to action. And so based on everything we've been talking about, you need to create more content that sounds like a conversation. What questions are your customers asking about your industry? Answer your customers in blog posts, on your website, and in video, maybe on YouTube, that's owned by Google, in YouTube Shorts. This is all stuff that we're trying ourselves to help make our company, more visible and more helpful to people on the web and in search. And I think if you do this, if you create more content that sounds like a conversation for your customers, you're going to help grow something good in this world.
Thanks for joining us today on Growing a Fruitful Brand. If you found today's show helpful, don't forget to subscribe and consider sharing it with someone who might also enjoy it. If you'd like to work with Fruitful on a branding, website, or messaging project of your own, you can always reach out on our website, fruitful.design. So until next time, don't forget to grow something good.